Good morning.
Good morning.
A hearty few. It's good. I'm glad you're here with us today at Parkrose Community United Church of Christ. We welcome everyone and we offer respects here to the ancestors and the descendants of the original people of this particular land. We invoke their presence as we welcome everyone by saying, whoever you are and wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. I invite you to stand as you're able as we begin with two songs. First, our God has done great things for us. Please take a moment and greet those who are here.
No, I'm saying, it's for next Sunday, so you won't be here, so I'll make sure it says something.
We came home into the sunset and
Kids, morning again.
As we come into a time of prayer, let's begin with our centering song, Search Me, O God. Together in one voice. God of justice and mercy, hear our prayer. We have learned to believe that when we suffer, it must be because we have done something wrong. We struggle to discern what we have done and why you would punish us in this way. Help us to see you want restoration, not retribution for us. We are not perfect, but if we can be in an active spiritual relationship with you, we can live into our best possible selves. Clear away old understandings and open us to new ways of being with you. We come into the silence, vulnerable and open to your guidance. We respond together. Your presence is real to us, and we are ready to be transformed. Invite any young folks or young at heart folks to come join me on the Hi kids, how are you today? You are. Lots of young at heart people. So I want to talk to you about something special today. Do you know that word? Do you play Scrabble? Does anybody play Scrabble? Friend. How many points?
10.
10 points. Friend. So what is a friend?
Someone to fight with.
You're playing the role quite well today.
Someone you trust?
What?
Someone you trust?
Someone you trust.
Yes, stand by you, and you stand by them. You can laugh or cry, and it's all okay.
Yep. Well, what happens? How do you know that that person is a friend?
I choose to be a friend with everybody, so if they don't want to be a friend, that's their choice, not mine.
Okay.
That's one way, but idealistically.
Okay, how do you, that's one way. Is there another way that you can decide if someone
They're
is?
nice to me first.
You guys are harder than a little bit.
They share their sandwich with you.
Yeah. So a real friend is someone that's connected with you, that has your best interest at heart as well as theirs, and also the relationship at heart. Sometimes people we call friends aren't really friends because they lead us in a way that we really ought not to be going. How many times has your mother or father said, for me it was my mother who always said, well, just because they do it doesn't mean you have to do it. Why did you do that? Well, they were all just because they... So I think we have to be careful about who we decide our real friends are. That doesn't mean we have to hate them if they're not our friend, but we have to be clear about where we are, and we have to be clear about what we're willing to do and what we think is right. Okay? It's hard being friends, but friends are the best. All right, let's have a prayer, okay? Dear God, we're so thankful for friends, especially those friends who are true friends for us. Help us to be friends for others and to live in ways into our very best selves. In your many beautiful names. Amen. Amen. All right, thank you. Go back to your seat. Our Now Testament for this morning comes from a blog that I see periodically that John Pavlovitz writes, and he's just spot on so many times. You know when you read something and you're going like this guy really hits the nail on the head. And this week in his blog, which he calls Stuff That Needs to Be Said, he laments the state of public discourse, especially from extreme supporters of the current administration. Here's how he puts it. There's no happiness, no benevolence, nothing life-giving left there. The emotional deficit is continually on display. With each angry gesture, with every slandering epithet, they reveal in high-definition detail what it looks like when someone loses the light inside them. War does this to the human heart. These are people at war with the world. They hate gays, they hate immigrants, they hate Muslims, they're against foreigners, scientists, atheists, they're against liberals, Democrats, the media, against teenage shooting survivors, against athletes and entertainers. The world in their heads is composed almost entirely of enemies and adversaries. And as a result, they are perpetually disgusted. I realize this has become the difference now, the dividing line in the version of America, in this version of America. It's between joyful people and miserable people. As disheartening as it is to witness people this internally toxic, it's a cautionary reminder of who we do not want to become. Let me read that again. It's a cautionary reminder of who we do not want to become, of what we can't let this back and forth do to us. We have to fight to keep goodness inside us, despite the outside badness, to never be defined by how many things we hate. I want my default response in this life to always be hope and not derision. May we who oppose this national malignancy never become so devoid of lightness that we resemble those who support it. May we never celebrate someone's suffering. Never weaponize our religion to do harm. Amen. Never grow comfortable with hearts that are only capable of anger. May we never lose our laughter, our softness, our lightness in this life. And may a smile always come easily to us.
Amen.
I invite Sharon to bring us the passage from Job this morning.
Our passage from Job comes from chapter 18, 1 through 6, verse 21, and then chapter 19, 1 through 6. Job and Bildad debate the reasons for Job's suffering. Then Bildad the Shuhite replied, "When will you end these speeches? Be sensible, and then we can talk. Why are we regarded as cattle and considered stupid in your sight? You who tear yourself to pieces in your anger. Is the earth to be abandoned for your sake? Or must the rocks be moved from their place? The lamp of a wicked man is snuffed out. The flame of his fire stops burning. The light in his tent becomes dark. The lamp beside him goes out. Surely such is the dwelling of an evil man. Such is the place of one who does not know God." Then Job replied, "How long will you torment me and crush me with words? 10 times now you have reproached me. Shamelessly you attack me. If it is true that I've gone astray, my error remains my concern alone. If indeed you would exalt yourselves above me and use my humiliation against me, then know that God has wronged me and drawn his net around me."
As we talked last week, as we're beginning our 4-week study of the book of Job, Job lost everything. It was laid out as a deal between God and Satan that Job was to be tested by taking away everything but his life. And Job is angry about this.
Does he know it?
Duh. What?
Does he know this plan is in action? I mean, is he part
No.
of that?
No, he doesn't know.
Okay.
It's just happened. He knows, as we said earlier in the prayer, we've been taught, we've been trained very well to think that if we are suffering, it's because we did something wrong.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
And that's one of the questions that we're going to be struggling with in this study. Is that true? What does that really mean? Is it something that's been foisted on us to control us? We don't know all those things. And hopefully, by the end of the 4 weeks, we'll have a better chance of knowing. Not that we'll know for sure. But in any case, in today's passage, we've got these 3 friends of Job who have gathered to support him, except they wind up, this is a picture from the William Blake series. Incredible artwork. William Blake, the 18th century author and illustrator. And there's this wonderful series of illustrations. And here's the 3 friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. And they're all from places that we don't know where they are, which supports the fact that this is a legend. This is not a historical tale. It's something that we need to not take as real life, but that we learn about our real lives from what happens in this legend. So these three guys in this central part of the book of Job go back and forth with Job. There are three sets, some commentators call them cycles, where each of the three has something to say to Job, and Job responds to each of them in turn. So there's this cycle 1. This particular passage comes from the second cycle. And through these cycles, the friends' speeches get shorter and Job's speeches get longer. So it's as if they're giving up eventually, and Job is speaking louder in his own defense, although he doesn't seem to even know what his defense is. It's a real struggle, and only in this kind of struggle can we get clarity in our own spiritual life. Can we cleanse our souls? Can we find out what's going on between us and God? We have to wade in over our heads. And that's what's happening in this part. Now basically, this is the gist of each of the friends. Eliphaz the Temanite, and as I said, we don't know where any of these places are, nor do we know where Uz is, where Job came from. So that just supports the fact this is a legend. Eliphaz tells Job that he's being punished for his sins. What we just talked about. You did something wrong, therefore you get punished. Then Bildad said Job is being tested. His kind of gist is Job is being tested for even greater reward. But still, it winds back with this saying, you did something wrong, so you need to be tested. And Zophar, his basic course of this discussion is Job's suffering is God's arbitrary will. Now, my dear friend Katie sent an email that I saw this morning that talked about the 10 reasons. There was some kind of survey, and the 10 reasons people go to church. That is not one of them, do you think? No. Do you think? However, dealing with people who tell us that's the truth is one of the things we have to deal with as Christians. When Robert and I left this morning, this flyer was on the car. You got one too, right? Yeah. The most important decision in your life as man or woman, the Holy Bible's words, not mine. Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And then the commentary says, this Jesus is the only way you can be saved. Do it my way or you're going to hell. This is disgusting as far as I'm concerned. And it's about what John Pavlovitz is kind of getting at too. It's this self-righteous position that says, unless you do it my way, you're damned. And it's your own fault. So, although this tends to be talking to young people, encouraging them to save their friends by telling them about Jesus. Sadly, the things they tell, the things this writer wants them to tell is all about acknowledging Jesus as Lord, not loving your neighbor, not loving the stranger, not any of the things that we're called to do. Nor does the survey really address those things, right?
Right.
I read that survey and I went, where's the service? Where's the mission? Where's the... Yeah. So, you can tell I'm really cranked up this morning. It would appear to many commentators, and I really think this is the truth, the book of Job is a way of putting to rest the theory of retributive justice as related to God. Retribution is where that word comes from. We had a hard time saying it in Bible study.
Yeah.
Retributive justice. That's about balance. If you do something this bad, then you get punished the equal amount. An eye for an eye. if you are suffering, you must have done something wrong. And I'm here to tell you, my friends, that the God I believe in, the God that I honestly think is active in our lives, is not about retribution, but about restoration.
Amen. Amen.
And the book of Job gets at this in very interesting ways. It's difficult reading, I'm not going to lie to you. Nancy's been struggling through it, and Greg Malky as well have been reading the book. It's hard to pull apart all the pieces. And I think that's not accidental, because Job's journey through this spiritual renewal, restoration, is a difficult one, because he's acting the way he was taught to believe. That if stuff happens to me, someday I might even actually use the word, if stuff happens to me, then I did something wrong. And
Well, that's so simple, doesn't it?
yeah, that doesn't really get at the answer, does it? It's just a way out. So this journey, this is a Van Gogh painting, and if anybody experienced suffering, it was Vincent van Gogh. And this painting really spoke to me, the journey through the wheat field with the crows hanging around. And that journey is through suffering. That we have to move through the suffering, not walk around it. But suffering is something that happens to all of us. We can't explain why it happens.
Right.
What we can do is go through it, make a journey through it, and come out on the other side knowing something different that we
Amen.
didn't know than when we started.
Amen.
So I know that let's all do that. Let's all sigh. There are not easy answers, my friends. There are not easy answers. However, getting through it will change your life.
Amen.
Yes.
You can be support to others too. Yeah. As long as you don't say, this is the way to do it. I've been there, I've done it. How often does that happen? Have you been sick or something and someone has all this advice? Well, yeah, I do this, do this, do this. And pay attention when we get to the peace moment today. I think this talks a lot about what we're getting at here, about having compassion for other people. That it's not just a simple, you're my friend, but it's about walking in their shoes.
Walking next to them, with them.
With them. Not all storms come to disrupt your life. Some come to clear your path.
Amen.
Now, again, there's a danger of looking for a storm because you want to clear your path. I don't think that's the case here. Stuff is going to happen. I think we're going to discover in this reading of Job that life is wild and chaotic,
Yes.
and it always will be.
Yes.
And God isn't punishing us. We have to get through that stuff. It's not about punishment, it's about restoration. And by getting through it, we can then be ready for the next storm, right?
Amen.
Good news, right? There's another storm around the corner. Part of me wants to lighten the discussion, but part of me also wants you to understand this is a serious discussion, and I think it's one that's important for us to have among ourselves at the moment, so that when we go out that door, we can feel secure in our understanding of our relationship with God, so that we can get through what's out there, and we can also speak a different truth than the commonly accepted Christian truth that's out there, that is not compassionate, that's ugly and divisive. And I really think, I know that's where I'm called to be. I don't quite know how that works. But maybe together we can figure that way through the storm and find ways that we can speak the truth that we call Christianity. We're going to sing, as I mentioned last week, we're going to sing an African American spiritual each week as a kind of a response to the sermon time. So today we're going to sing Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child. Can you play it all the way through for us once? That would be great. Our ushers will receive the morning offering now. pray together. Receive our gifts, Holy One, which we offer from our own vulnerability. May they provide healing and wholeness wherever people are hurting. In your many beautiful names. Amen. You may be seated. Part of maintaining our own spiritual health is a regular interaction with the holy, with God. And we do that in a number of ways, but one of the most important ways for us on Sundays is to share the prayers that we bring with this community. What prayers do you bring with you this morning?
I have a great prayer of joy. I have a granddaughter that was born at 12:48 a.m. this morning. Gentry Faye Garrett. Gentry Faye Garrett.
Tammy has a granddaughter who was born just this morning. Gentry Faye Garrett. God of love.
Thank you for your presence.
Prayer of safe travel for the youth as they come back home today.
Yes, prayers of safe travel for our youth who have been in Bandon, working on the beach there and exploring what can be done with plastic that comes out of you. So prayers for their safe return. God of love.
Thank you for your presence.
I asked prayers for my ex-husband, Gerald Stevens, who was saved to God and made peace several years ago. His daughters, my twin girls, have gone down to administer care and comfort and bring air conditioning when their air conditioning had gone out, and bringing healing cannabis and for pain. And so I just give thanks for family and love and forgiveness.
And what was his first name?
Gerald.
Gerald.
Yeah.
So Diana is asking prayers for her ex-husband Gerald, and as he deals with various issues in his life, and their daughters, twin daughters, are going to help him. He's in California.
Right.
God of love.
Thank you for your presence.
Prayers for Alma. She's got multiple problems.
Prayers for Alice Johnson as she is struggling with several issues at the moment. God of love.
Thank you for your presence.
We had a joy. Last night we had a person from the Philippines stay with us. It was kind of I just think it was a God thing because she had no place to stay and we were able to have a place for her. So it was great. She was a wonderful person.
The ex are expressing gratitude for the gift of a stranger in their house.
Her name was Yaga.
Yaga, who brought wonderful gifts to them. God of love.
Thank you for your presence.
Let's pray together. Gracious and loving God, we open ourselves to you now at this time. From amidst our own vulnerability and suffering, we ask you to be with those who've been named aloud today, and with all those that we hold so dear and close to us. We ask you to be present with them in such a way that they can feel your very presence. And as well, we ask that you can empower us to be that presence for everyone we meet. We give thanks for meeting new people, for welcoming strangers into our houses and discovering the amazing world beyond ourselves. We ask you to be with all who live in harm's way, whether it be in the path of war or domestic violence. May they find peace. May they find ways to find shelter and comfort. And may we, again, be providers of that very peace for them. We ask you to be with world leaders and help them understand that peace does not come through violence. And that by describing space as a place for war is not acceptable. We ask you to be with all those who protect us in the many, many different ways, whether they be police or state troopers or those who serve in the military honorably, trying to help create peace somehow in this world that's torn apart. Be with those who live on our city streets, help them find all that they need, food or shelter or relationship. Help us to be compassionate as we hear their stories and work to find ways that we can help them find wholeness in their lives. All of these things we ask in the name of our brother and teacher, Jesus of Nazareth, who taught us to pray together in these words from the Gospel of Luke. Abba God, help us to honor your name. Come and set up your kingdom. Give us each day the food we need. Forgive our sins, as we forgive everyone who has done wrong to us. And keep us from being tempted. Amen. Peace moment today comes from the daily devotional earlier this week by Talitha Arnold. She starts with a quote from the Gospel of Mark. In those days, there was again a crowd without anything to eat. He called his disciples and said to them, I have compassion for the crowd. Mark 8, 1 and 2. The Christian faith really isn't all that complicated. We may try to make it so, counting the number of angels on the head of a pin, debating whether to say trespasses or debts, arguing over the wording of this resolution or that proclamation. Meanwhile, Jesus keeps it pretty simple. Faced with 4,000 hungry people in the desert, he told his disciples, I have compassion for the crowd. If I send them away hungry to their homes, they will faint on the way. The disciples were rightfully concerned for the practicality of this feeding program, but Jesus didn't start with practicality. He started with compassion. It's a word that comes from two Latin words, cum, which means with, and patir, which means to experience deeply or to suffer. To have compassion is to enter deeply into the experience of another, deep enough to know their suffering and feel their hunger. It's what Jesus did throughout his ministry. It's why we call the story of his last days the Passion. Jesus could have quoted the Bible's injunctions to feed the hungry. He could have reminded the disciples how God cared for ancestors in their desert times. He didn't. Instead, he simply focused on the crowd's hunger. He reminded the disciples and himself what would happen to the people if he and the disciples didn't do something to help. He started from compassion. May we who call ourselves Christian do the same.
Amen.
Amen. Oh God of love, oh God of peace, make wars to come, the world to cease, heal every lawless hurt and pain. Give peace, O God, give peace again. You'll find announcements on the back of the bulletin. No council or finance meetings today. August is our month off. Oktoberfest volunteers, we're going to meet next Sunday at 11:30 in the Mariners Room. I think everybody has job assignments. We want to just be sure everybody's on the same page and we're ready to go. And in that vein, there are flyers out there on the desk in the entryway. Please take several and put them up in your favorite venue, a grocery store, a restaurant, wherever. You know, you don't get if you don't ask. So ask, and people will more than likely say, sure, we'll put that up. So this is a fundraiser. It's one of our major fundraisers for the ministry programs of this church. So, and besides that, it's a whole lot of fun. It's on October 6th, and flyers are in the entryway. Please take those. Tomorrow night is the Square Riggers dinner at Bridge City Tap Room. Lucille and Tub are someplace in Austria or Czechoslovakia right now, so don't reply to her. Talk to me if you're planning to come. Oh, yes?
We had Peace and Justice right after.
Today?
Yeah, we forgot to.
Not next week?
I don't know what's on.
We have it down for next week.
Okay. Okay, what?
Y'all can figure that out. If you're on Peace and Justice next week,
I guess. We want to do it today.
that's what was on the calendar. Okay.
We just get together anyway, so.
Talk to Jan. All right. Are there other announcements which need to be made? Oh, there's wonderful farmers market outside.
And we have corn.
Oh, wow.
Not just corn. but
What I
there
mean,
is-
we just added that in.
Go out and check. It's huge today. So all kinds of things. So help yourself and leave a donation that will help us do our wintertime dinners. All right.
I just have one.
Yes.
Next Sunday is Miss Sally, Joyce, and I, we're serving lasagna, so bring your appetite because we have lots of it, along with garlic bread. But if you would like to have a dessert or a salad, please be free to bring something besides that.
Okay, next Sunday after church, there's lasagna and garlic bread. Side dishes, up to you. Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Is that it? Let's stand as we're able and sing our closing song, God of Grace and God of Glory. And now, may the God who walks with us through that wheat field, on that journey through suffering, May that same God touch you with courage and strength to complete that journey. Go in peace and live in love. Amen.
Amen.